Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here with us today. I am Nick Kanoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am excited for a special session of ALN Thursday at 3 today, featuring not one but four in a discussion. And before we get going on that, we just want to say thank you to ALN Platinum Organizational Member Onuma System for their continued support of programming like this, as well as the ALN BIM Storm, which our next event is happening next Wednesday, April 12th. And thank you also to our patron members, their continued support, as well as all of our organizational members in programming like this with Mary Adams and Smarter Companies, and the Andrew James Advisory Group and their upcoming A55K course. Thank you all for your continued support so we can do things like this in our newsletter. And with that, I would say next week on ALN Thursday at 3 at this time, Jack Dempsey is going to be with us. So hope you can join us. And with that, I will say if you're out there watching, we'd love to hear from you. So please send any comments, questions, or feedback to the chat. And Mike Bordenero, Executive Director, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Nick. How you doing in Lander, Wyoming?
Excellent. We're thawing slowly.
Good. Well, thank you. And this is definitely a different event. We are a network, and we networked University Health with Insights 7, and Insights 7 has helped University Health get started in packaging their asset management as a service. And I think it'll be best to introduce Art Kurland and his assistant, Eric. Art, you want to turn on so you guys can start. So I had an idea that you could use and benefit from the Insights 7 approach. What made you think that actually it would be something that was beneficial for you?
Okay, my audio okay?
Audio is fine. Yes, thank you.
So we're always looking at ways to improve the way we do things. And so, when I heard about Insight 7, I was very intrigued by it, and I just wanted to know more about it at first. And so I invited Mike and Mary to just kind of tell me what Insight 7 is all about. And it just went from there. Really, I was impressed with the tool, and we're always looking for better, sharper tools here at University Health.
Okay, so yeah, you're the first organization to be ISO 55001 certified. So yeah, clearly you're at a leading edge. And what I saw was that possibly it would shine a light on what you're already doing. Is that something that you found?
Yeah. So when I first started talking with Mike and Mary, part of the process was to fill out a form, basically what they call a canvas, and the canvas just has columns and rows, each one dedicated to what the task is, and then it just goes from there, how it relates to the rest of the organization. And so when I started filling that out, I discovered that there was a lot of things that we're doing that I didn't even know that we're doing. And that's when Mike kind of defined our role here as being a service provider. Basically, we provide asset management services, and I never really looked at it that way. So that was very eye-opening.
The internal service provider.
Correct.
Okay, so it's a software with preset canvas, as you said, to help people understand how their actions constitute a service. And what you did was then handed over to Eric.
Well, I did what I could with the canvas, and then Mike and Mary took that information or data and populated the Insight 7 application to just show the output of basically what was put in. And that just made me even more curious about what it could do for us, because we do a lot of things on spreadsheets, and I don't really like doing a lot of things on spreadsheets if it involves calculations and formulas and links to other spreadsheets and things of that nature, because it's very dependent on the person that creates those links and spreadsheets. And if, you know, that person wins the lottery and decides they're done working, then we're kind of stuck with this monstrosity of a data sets and in Excel spreadsheets that if something goes wrong, it's just not good. So when there's a system that comes along that can take our processes and create the outputs in a visual format that's repeatable, it's just a good thing.
Excellent. And I want to emphasize that we're not trying to be a commercial for Insight 7. What we're trying to do is promote the idea of managing your asset management system as a service, and that this process is good. The insights that you developed of how much you're doing and that you are an internal service provider are concepts that we want other people to adopt and embody, whether they're using Insight 7 software or not.
Yeah.
But that said, Eric, what did you find when you started working with Insight 7?
Well, we start to see the correlation between what we do and the overall mission of University Health and how we help out with everything across the board. So it's been real interesting to see the granular side of those things.
Eric, I couldn't think of a better first statement to make to the ALN. So that's my way of saying, sorry, I forgot to say welcome to the ALN. This is your first time on the program. I know you've been working with Art. I met you last year when I was down there in person, but it's good to have you involved again. So can you tell us more about what the process was and maybe how much time it took and what you're getting out of it beyond this big picture vision of alignment with mission, which is you're saying our favorite words when you say that.
So I can speak to the fact that I've been working with Mike and Mary the last couple months to look more into the system and taking it from where Arthur left off, the kind of the broader picture, but we're starting to bring the scope in more in on what we look at, again, back to the micro version of what Arthur was talking about, you know, the different levers and buttons that you have to press in Excel to get the output of showing your benefit. And so through their system, we're seeing that really dialed in and the ability to use it quickly and efficiently.
Is there an example of something that was revealed to you that wasn't quite clear, but popped out when you were working with your information in the Insight 7 system?
Well, so when I think about things, I try to find multi-uses for items. That's just the way that I think. And so through their system, I see how well we can look for outliers and some other items. So I might be stepping ahead and thinking about how well their system works, but most of it's looking at just kind of where our processes are currently and how they relate back to where we're moving forward in the health system.
That sounds to me a little bit like doing a gap analysis using the ISO 55001 to, help you see what you do well, what you don't do well, what you don't do at all, and what you might want to work on next.
Absolutely. So through this, we're seeing the pinch points very clearly, and then how they're relating back to other areas. So it's been real interesting just to look at it in its entirety that way.
Okay, well, that's enough of a tease. I think maybe we can bring Mary and Mike on, and while Mike fires up his screen to do a quick show of what's happening. Maybe Mary can give an overview. Welcome, Mary and Mike Hogan. And I learned this is the first time we've had Mike Hogan on. So welcome, Mike. And while Mike brings on his screen, Mary, will you give a little bit of an overview that I might have missed?
Sure. I think, and thank you for having me back. We've had a number of conversations over the past couple of years. And when the beginning of our conversations was really through my background with thinking very broadly about the capitals of the company, and ALN, and in the ISO standard, it talks about resources as anything that, or assets as any resource that a company needs to create value. And really that's the heart of what we're talking about here, is sustainable value creation, using your resources in a way that meets the needs of your customers, but also ensures the continued viability and strength of those underlying resources. And that's, I think, certainly a big part of what all of you think about at ALN in terms of asset management. And so the thing about value creation for a company is that it's a team sport, and each team has different roles to play. And that really is the connector to this idea that we've been saying about asset management as a service, that if you start identifying very clearly what it is that's being done in a way that's visible and measurable, then that helps you tell your story as asset managers. It helps you get the resources you need, and it hopefully will helps you think more clearly about how to be better, which I think is what why most people are here, right?
Yes.
So those are ideas that are valid in any case. If you don't use the software, then you definitely still can take a lot of lessons about how to organize your work, how to tell your story, what are some of the metrics you might use. So I know that Mike and Eric especially have been working on a few things. So I'll let Mike introduce yourself and get going.
Well,
Sure.
Before Mike gets started, I wanted to emphasize what you've said, Mary, is that we do talk a lot about measuring multiple values from assets. It's not just the depreciated value. It's not just the bottom line. And we haven't really shown how to represent that. So that's why I was excited about Insight 7. And so that's what I wanted to set up Mike to give a very brief overview. In the future, we'll do more of a nuts and bolts, but we're talking about this very theoretical concept. But I thought, Mike, if you could just spend a minute or two showing what you've done with the university health information, people would get a better understanding.
Sure. Yeah, thanks again for having us here, and looking forward to the opportunity to talk about the great work Art and Eric have been able to do. And I just want to kind of emphasize again, this is all about packaging value, right? So any of us, when we go to work, our only purpose is to create value, right? To generate output that creates value for somebody else, to help them do their job, to create something that creates value, and so on. That's basically the essence of a value chain. And asset management is certainly one of those things. So when Art talked about the canvas, the first thing we did is we came in and said, who's your customer, right? If you're an internal service provider, that means you have to have a customer by definition. And so we captured that as the customers who hire this product to do the job to be done, which we'll cover up here, is the people who are within this case, the hospital, that are using assets, right? The corporate
Can
account.
you make the screen a little bit wider? We just see colors. We really don't see any words.
No,
And maybe,
wow.
yeah, if you extend
A little
this,
bit.
yeah, a little bit bigger. Yeah, that helps.
There we go.
Yeah, make it wider. Get rid of all your trees there, and there might be more room. But that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So who's my customer? It always starts off with that. So it's really anybody within the hospital that's leveraging assets, and they need to be able to have those assets. And so the job that Art and his team are doing is, as we described it here, is to establish and manage a centralized governing process that enables what we're calling the VCL asset owners, the different departments throughout the hospital, to effectively and efficiently source, deploy, maintain, retire, and refresh the assets they depend on to perform their work. The job also includes asset cataloging, tagging, tracking, disposition, refurbishing, and reporting. So if I'm in one of those departments, I don't want to have to do that job myself. So it's very valuable for me to be able to tap into this service so I can focus on the clinical or the non-clinical work that we're doing, which is one of the key value propositions that this is bringing to the hospital. Is it's helping particularly the clinical teams. It's literally giving them capacity back to be able to focus on patient care. So now the next question is, if that's the customer and that's the job to be done, as Art said, there's this canvas that's basically saying, how do you structure that work? And so we look at it in terms of a customer journey perspective. And so that starts off with, kind of gaining awareness. Think of this from a marketing perspective. It's an internal service provider. So it's that, how do I make awareness of this service available, which in this case is like an internal service catalog. How do I order the product or service? How is it fulfilled? And then how is it used, right? And then if there is any type of customer care after the fact, that's the customer journey. This is the job to be done along each one of those phases. And then, so what we've done is we've identified the work, and then it's to say, okay, what does the work to achieve that look like? What are the processes and what are the resources that you are required to do that? So,
Okay, Mike?
Yeah.
This is a good time for me to say, that's why I knew University Health would be a good person to introduce you to, because they went through ISO 55001 and recertification. So I knew they had this information.
Right.
I just wanted to point that out. This wasn't anything they had to think up in the first place. They're just now cataloging it.
Exactly. And various customers we work with, some have it, like Art and Eric are pretty much, they're very mature, right? So again, we're not bringing any value to how they deliver the capability. We're just putting it into a structure, as we talked about, as you said, Michael, the internal service provider model. But you're right. Whoever you're talking to, whatever organization, if you can break it down into those work categories, and you can say, okay, what is required to be able to do that work? What's the labor resources? What's the technology? What are the services? They're usually able to rattle it off. So that's what you're populating the canvas with. So that's more of the what. And then the last piece is the KPIs. It's the measurement. It's the why. Why are you doing that work, right? So that's getting into, for example, for ease of order. The people that are putting the order into the asset management team, that should be a very easy, straightforward process. That's how they're measuring how well it works. Then they get into, after it's ordered, the time to fulfill. Was it done in a reasonable period of time? And then, of course, are the assets delivering and being maintained, et cetera. So, and again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but you can get the idea. It's the work, it's the resources, and then how it's performed. And basically what we're doing is we're saying, if you're starting with the end, if you know what the performance targets look like for your customer, then you should be engineering your work and the associated resources to be able to hit those targets. If you're doing that, then you're not over engineering the work, which is a waste of financial resources, or you're not under engineering it, which introduces risk. Then the other part of it is, then you've got, I can be doing all those things and hitting the target for my customer, but we also want to make sure we're doing this in a sustainable way. We've got to be able to deliver the service in a way that's feasible financially. We want to make sure that we're being environmentally conscious. And, University Health Texas, that hospital, I mean, you guys are doing some great things that are really a great story to tell from the environmental health performance perspective. So we're providing a way to be able to capture and put that information in there. So this was, there's other pieces of it, continuous improvement, but basically it captures the entire universe of asset management as a service. And then we said, okay, now that we kind of understand that, that's when we started to put it into the system. And then we've got that same work breakdown analysis, but really where it's been getting interesting, as Eric said, is diving in, and Eric, chime in here at any point. But these are the things that Eric's been saying, yep, Art and I feel these are the important metrics. And even though there's, got quite a book of metrics, but what this is doing, and again, chime in, guys, if I'm misrepresenting this in any way, but they've said these are the things that matter most, right?
Can you make this a little bigger also?
There you go.
That just helps us see it better.
Yeah, and so these are the metrics that they say matter to us, and we've got, and then to be able to say these are kind of the red, green, yellow thresholds of performance. So if you're familiar with monitor for normal, these are those high-low thresholds that drive triggers. But in addition, this gray horizontal line, that's basically your current performance. And then the horizontal is your target performance. So, and Eric, maybe you can talk about this as far as you're communicating what you guys are doing to multiple audiences, your own team, your teams that you're interfacing with, as well as your executive management team.
Yes, these numbers are brought in from a report or multiple reports that I put together for our monthly meeting to meet with my folks and look back and say, this is what you've accomplished last month, and get the buy-in from my own department. So that way they can get out there and get other people involved with the asset management side of the business.
Was there any surprises in terms of how well you were performing? I see like in work orders completed within 6 days, you're at 99.6%. That's outstanding.
Only in that Mike and Mary were impressed by it. We look at it every month, and it's kind of old hat to us, but to have someone else look at it and say, wow, this is really impressive has been nice.
Well, then also internally, I could see that people would have that same reaction, but I suspect you present those monthly and that they're pretty aware of it also.
So our folks are, because they're doing the work and they're not always able to look back at what they're doing. They're just full steam ahead. But when we sit down and we do get to present numbers to upper leadership, this is the type of system that would be nice to be able to show them what's going on and get more buy-in into the asset management program based off of a high-level overview and how this benefits everyone.
I think the key thing too is in the format, you've got a lot of different metrics that mean a lot of different things. And when you're communicating this outside of your team that eats, as Eric says, that eats and breathes it every day, it takes less calories to try to understand whether the number, what you're seeing, the graph, is good or not. But this at a glance lets you scan through it and see what performance looks like from a red, yellow, green perspective, and if there's any gap between target and between current and target performance. And if there is, and again, this is an anomaly because normally when we're working with customers, there's a lot of gaps and there's a lot more stuff that's in yellow and red. So everything is, what do you want to do? Manage it as is or improve. But it allows us to kind of communicate to people, this is what matters most right now. We're killing it on these areas, but maybe here there's a gap, or it allows Art and Eric to be able to say, here's where I want you to focus. Doesn't mean don't pay attention to the other stuff, but just understand health-wise, we're doing pretty well on the other stuff. But we also can show trends. So if you're tracking this over time, I think this was the one we were going to show, right, Eric? Unallocated asset inventory efficiency. So I can pull this up and say, it's not just about what we look like today, but here's what our trend looks like over time. And so, I think it was Nick at the very beginning in the chat said it's about continuous improvement. If you're understanding how you're performing in terms of target performance and current performance, it starts to help you prioritize where to put your resources and efforts in order to make some movement. Because if you know that you're tracking and there's a visualization of what your trajectory is, it tends to motivate much more optimization and innovative behavior to be able to get the most out of your, in this case, asset management as a service.
And as far as I can tell, the dip in performance coincides with the beginning of summer holidays. And maybe that's okay, and not a surprise, right, Art?
It would make sense.
Yeah,
So
I
then-
can't interpret. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Art, you are on top of this like not too many people I know. So I would suspect that there weren't a lot of surprises here for you. But do you see this ability of presenting your work in a way that will help you maybe request additional resources because you want to meet goals? Is this something that you think could help in advancing your department?
Yeah, I think it could serve as a, I guess like a warning light if we're starting to slip somewhere. To be honest, I mean, Eric has done most of the work. This is actually the first time I'm seeing these results of the input.
Okay.
And so, I'm sure you heard me say before, it's hard to maintain a high level. It's harder to maintain a high level than it is to get to that high level. So something like this can help us maintain that high level, like I said, which is more difficult to do than getting there in the first place.
Wow. Very profound insight there. So, Mike, if you can stop sharing your screen, we'll take just a little time to provide an overview here. So this is the first time we've done this type of software presentation or process presentation to our audience. And Mary, you like you said, you've been connected to the ALN for a bit now. Can you make any high-level overview of how you see this approach being useful to organizations?
Yeah, I think, and this is one of the reasons I first kind of pitched the idea of working on the canvas first and then, going a little deeper as they saw value in it, is that, what asset managers do is so important to an organization, but it's kind of, if it's not packaged and easier to understand, it's just kind of a support thing that people do. And by really seeing it as its own value creation, almost business, right? I think that helps pull together so many of the things that all of you do to, all the discipline of the ISO standard, the work that you have to do every day, to break it down and take a kind of a continuous improvement process approach, and be able to connect all the dots. I think that's the value. I mean, it's like, I don't think, not that you don't have a high opinion of yourselves, but I think you need to puff out your chest a little and say, hey, look at what we're doing. And being able to see it and tell the story in just a little bit, clearer way that has the context for others outside to understand the value of everything you're doing, more easily, and help that message get through.
Yeah, that reminds me of that story Mike told about people learn different ways. You have to, show people the same thing different ways sometimes. And so it helps. Definitely, it's just another way of presenting what it is we do.
Mike Hogan, thank you for answering Cecilia's question. I was going to ask you to incorporate that into your wrap up, but do you want to make any closing statements?
Sure. So yeah, Cecilia asked a great question in terms of, is there any visibility in terms of who else connects into this? So we're showing asset management as an internal service. What we're also able to show, and I'd be happy to pull it up if anyone wants to see it, but it's how it connects into the rest of the company value chain, right? So these guys work hand in glove. You've got a council that you're working with, right, Art? That's made up of these different internal service providers, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, what often happens in organizations is they'll see, for example, the work that Art and Eric are doing. They're saying, hey, we want to do that in our department and define procurement as a internal service provider, or outbound logistics as an internal service provider. And they start to connect together, and they're doing the same thing. So yes, it starts to you're actually literally managing a connected value chain.
And the University Health is experiencing that already, because other departments have seen their use of ISO 55001, and now they're teaching other departments. And so what your software does is help people gain recognition for what they are already doing and see the areas where they want to take other actions. So that's really nice. And Eric, any closing statement that you'd like to make?
No, the software is fantastic, and it's been a lot of fun to work with Mary and Mike on this.
Excellent. And Art, anything, or are you good?
No, I mean, I think we said it all. It's good. Just, it's always think forward, just
Yes.
gotta keep improving it. That's the bottom line.
So thank you to all of you. Okay, Mike?
Cecilia said if it's possible to show it, I can pull that up real quick to show that connection.
Well, we would like to wrap up. We're just
Got
a
it.
little bit over. We did really good to get all 4 people talking in time. So Nick, if you can bring us home, and then we'll do a little after class session.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here today and presenting and listening and participating in the discussion. And thank you to our Platinum organizational member, Onuma System, as well as our patron members and other organizational members, including Smarter Companies, and Mary Adams for participating here today. And Cecilia Moat and Strategies Insight also participating in the conversation. So thank you to everyone who helps make this possible.
Especially University Health there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Thanks,
Mike
guys.
can share screen again.
Yeah, I'll just be real quick. So hopefully Cecilia's still on.
She's excited about the secret sauce.
So yeah, we're looking at that particular link, but we will show the entire value chain as it draws out. As you can imagine, it's
Is this the one with the spider web lines?
the one. Yeah, so every company is a
I
value
love this. I love this one.
That's right. Michael knows it well. So in this particular case, these are all the links that connect into the value chain. And so if we want to search,
Again, make it a little bigger. We're all kind of an old audience here. Nick is our youngster.
to the degree I can without losing it.
That's fine. That's good.
So you see here, it finds where we just were. We were down at it within the personal property management service, right? That's Art and Eric's world. And you can see what its connections are, but you see it also ties into financial management and procurement and outbound logistics and IT and production and, everything, sales and marketing. And then of course, whatever their clinical work would be at the top, your stars. You can kind of see down here, our legend is anything that's in the white, that's your production. Your stars are what your go-to-market services are. In this case, that would be where patient care is happening. But Cecilia, hopefully this is kind of showing you that wherever you click, it's showing you what those connections look like from when we dive into it, from a customer and a supplier perspective. Back to everything you do in an organization, you've got a customer, and this is one service provider that we talked about today, but it's the same model wherever you would go throughout the rest of your organization.
And this is one of the things that I think gave birth to asset leadership as opposed to asset management. Humans have evolved their tools and processes to the point where they're very complex, and it's hard for people to get their arms around everything that's going on. And a tool like this gives people a handle so that they can understand the complexities. And Nick made the comment to never underestimate the power of a visual. This could help an organization say, wait a second, I'm not connected in this value creation system snapshot here, and my department should be.
Right. Yep. We had one partner who said, what helps is you can't keep all of the moving parts in your mind in a business. And so what this does, it helps to define that universe so that you can focus. You can't focus on everything. So what matters most depending on where you are in the organization. And if everyone's focusing on that, delivering value to their customers in a way that's sustainable, then you're going to have a pretty high performing company. And you're also going to, business is going to start to make a much better impact on the world in doing it that way as well.
And I started off saying that what we're not, clearly we are showing your software, but what we're trying to advocate is people to embrace the concept of structuring their asset management systems in a way that they can see what the connections are. And this just does a really good job of doing that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So what we look at, this is sustainable value management, just like there's financial management and HR management and CRM and ERP. This is what's called sustainable value management. It's an enterprise process. This is an example of an enterprise sustainable value management system. But to Michael's point, some people can do it with different systems or spreadsheets or whatever it may be. This
Not
is
spreadsheets, not spreadsheets.
But it's an example of, to your point, it's sustainable thinking and embedding it into day-to-day operations.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just like in asset management, you can't measure what you're not managing. And so as a service, I mean, you don't get the full picture unless you see the areas and the other value chains that you interact with.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Everybody stuck around. So they were interested in this overtime after class session. And we do plan on doing more with Insight 7 in the future. But now people have an idea of what to be thinking about, and we'll get highlights out and be able to share that information. So thank you so much to University Health, Art Kurland, and Eric, and Mary, and Mike at Insight 7. And thank you, Nick, and thank you to the audience. And next week we have Jack Dempsey, and then the following week after that, something really special, how to prevent mishandling of sexual assault in the workplace so you can better manage your intangible values of your workers and their output and your brand and your reputation. It's one of our first times in really veering off into a non-physical asset issue, and really looking forward to that. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week on ALN Thursday at 3.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.